Thank you for coming. I'm JoAnna Tebbs Young, and you may know my name and my face. I'm a columnist for the Rutland Herald and also for the Rutland Reader. And if you're not familiar with the Rutland Reader, this is the latest, this is today's, and I actually wrote the cover story for this one. And I'm showing it to you so that when you see it at the grocery store, pick it up, because it is the most positive voice in Rutland. So that's my little plug for that. Great writers in there. So I have been journaling since I was about 12 years old, and I got certified when there's a long history in between that, which I'm going to skip, but after college and I had my first child, I decided I had to teach other people how to journal. I woke up one morning and went, oh my goodness, I need to help people do this. I didn't know that people did such a thing, I just wanted to do it. And so then I got certified, discovered there's actually people who do that, and there is a Center for Journal Therapy in Denver, Colorado, where I ended up getting certified. And then I went on, and there's actually a graduate program in this field, believe it or not. I just got my master's in August in transformative language arts. And what that is using the spoken or written word for change, personal or social change. So that is what my background is. And I and my husband own the Allen House Coaching Collaborative, which sounds really big, but it's just this little house, in the little building in the back of our house on Kendall Avenue. And we run workshops, and my husband has a private practice in there, and there's information. And let's see, so columnist, and I blog, and so I think that's it for me. That's who I am. Okay, so what we're going to do is reduce your stress, hopefully. And it's kind of a funny, this morning, my daughter's being sick this week. She had strep throat, and so I got really behind. And so by the time I got to this morning, I was so stressed out. And I wrote on my Facebook wall, I'm stressed out because one of the things I have to prep for is my workshop, Reduce Your Stress. So I had to do a little work on myself today. So we're going to cover what is journaling, because this type of writing that I'm going to teach you, it comes under the category of journaling. Another term for it is expressive writing. There's many, many terms, but those are the two we're going to kind of talk about. We're going to very briefly talk about how you can start writing yourself. We're going to talk about why it's beneficial, which is the reason you're here, is to find out how you can use writing as a way to reduce your stress. The bonus with this type of writing is that while you're reducing your stress, you are discovering about yourself. It's introspective, self-reflective writing, and so it has many, many benefits. And so we're going to talk about how it calms you down, and we're going to do some writing, and I'm going to give you some prompts. But also on your table, I've given you a bookmark which has some prompts that you can take home with you. So you can never ever again say, I'd like to journal, but I don't know what to write about. Well, there are your prompts. Okay, so does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. So we're going to start right in. We're going to do some writing. And this technique, journaling technique, I actually teach 22 journaling techniques, which is from the Center of Journal Therapy. The Journal to the Self workshop, which is what I am certified in. And Kay Adams is the woman who founded that and wrote that book, and she calls it a 5-minute sprint. And what a 5-minute sprint is a timed writing. And the point of it is to outrun your censor. You know what the censor is? The one in your head that tells you that what you're writing is stupid or not important. We want to outrun that person, thing, whoever that is in your head. So if you do it quickly, for a short amount of time, without thinking, you can write you can get to your truth faster. So why 5 minutes? Well, I always say, if you don't have 5 minutes in your life, you need to change your schedule. Everyone can journal. That is the biggest thing I hear is, I don't have time to journal. Yes, you do. You have 5 minutes. And even if you only have a napkin to write on, you can journal. So let's see what we're talking about here. So I'm going to give you the prompt, and then I'm going to time you for 5 minutes. So the prompt is, and before I start, no one is going to read this, and I'm not going to ask you to share, so this is the place to get it out, whatever you need to get out. We censor ourselves enough in our regular life. We don't need to do it in our journals. So the prompt is, what's going on? That is your prompt. You may start. So it goes pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
And how did everyone feel? Do you feel like you got quite a lot out, or was it struggle? Just general feedback? Got a lot out? Yeah, yeah. In general, if you're not editing yourself and you're not worried about your handwriting and spelling and all that stuff, you really can get somewhere. So if the only prompt you ever wrote on was what's going on, you would say something different every single time. We're like onions, you know. We can ask ourselves the same question over and over again, and each time you ask, you get deeper and deeper and deeper. So what I would like you to do now is we're just going to go straight to another little exercise before I talk about what is journaling and expressive writing. Thank you. So what I would like you to do is to think of one thing that's stressing you out right now. Just one. Not a whole list, just one. We'll get to a list later. So, and just write it in the middle of a page, however you want to write it. Big letters, little tiny letters, however you want to do it. And while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a quick story. So when I was part of my graduate program, I did a lot of journaling. That's basically how I wrote my memoir and my thesis, was I wrote them in my journal first. And I had a lot of things I had to figure out. And so this one time there was this one thing I didn't really want to deal with. And I decided, I had the house to myself for a couple hours, I'm just going to do this. So I sat there and I wrote this thing that I didn't really want to be writing and got it all out, and then for some reason I finished writing it, and I had this urge to turn my journal upside down. And I turned it upside down and I wrote over what I had just written in a different colored pen over what I had just written. And so the symbolism there was that I was rewriting that thing that I had a problem with, and I flipped it on its head. So this is what I would like you to do now. You don't have to flip it on your head, but what I would like you to do is take that one thing that's stressing you out right now, and I want you to scribble over it, draw over it, write over it something positive. Just do what you feel you need to do with that right now. Okay, so that's something that you can work on some more if you want to make an art project out of it. That might be kind of fun. Okay, so what is journaling, expressive writing? So journaling is different from writing a diary, and you know, a lot of 12-year-old girls tend to start writing a journal, a diary. And some boys too. It tends to be more girls. But this is different. This is not the Dear Diary, I went here, I did this today. This is Dear Diary, today I feel this. This is about feelings. And it's getting to a deeper place. So expressive writing is part of that, where you are writing, you're expressing your feelings. And when you're expressing your feelings, that is how we lower our stress. Because as anybody who has had any illness knows, or any anxiety, I'm sure, you feel it in your body. And when we get stressed, it can manifest in our body. And so suppressing our emotions is not a healthy thing to do. Not to say there isn't some healthy stress, but we won't go into that right now. Another way of saying this is free writing. This is just letting your pen go on the paper. It is making lists. Some people love lists, some people hate lists. My husband, ask him to write a list, he has a heart attack. He's just, nope, stresses him out. Me, I need a list to be able to calm myself down. So we're all different. Doodling, scribbling, what I just suggested you do. Doodling is an incredibly therapeutic thing to do. You know, little kids, they just scribble, 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 doodle, doodle, doodle. And it turns out that doodling is actually very helpful for adults. It helps you learn, you know, when you're sitting in a business meeting and you're falling asleep. And doodling helps us take things in. And I don't know if anyone heard me on the radio on last Monday morning. Oh, good. So I'm not repeating myself. So I got interviewed about this. What I did with my kids was I'd have a piece of paper on the table, and when they came home from school feeling or whatever it was they were, but they didn't know how to express it, I'd have different colored crayons on the table, and it was sad, mad, and glad. And so they could express through the crayons how they were feeling. Well, there's no reason why we can't do that. If you're feeling a certain way and you don't have the words for it, if you're really mad, get a big fat crayon like these little kids use. This is all the way of journaling or expressing yourself. So doodling, I know what I was going to say about the radio interviewer. He said that he got in a lot of trouble in Catholic school because he'd be doodling. And I said, well, actually, they were doing a huge disservice because we learn so much better when we preoccupy that part of our brain. We'll talk a little bit more about this. The part of our brain that's going crazy all the time, talking to us, da-da-da-da-da. If we're doodling, it's like, okay, you go over there and do that so that I can learn over here, okay? You doodle over there, I'm gonna learn. So, another way is just little notes, noticing things. We just note when we're noticing. So you drive out of here tonight, I guess it might be about the right time. Beautiful sunset, just note it down. Put yourself right in that moment. Dreams. Dreams are a big one. That's a whole nother topic, which I hope I can't go into here, but dream journals are a big thing. Writing is a form of prayer. It's a form of meditation. So you can write your prayers as a form of journaling. And if you don't take anything else out of here today, I recommend a gratitude journal. There's this little saying, what we focus on grows. If you focus on the negative, that's what you're going to see. That's what's going to get bigger. So if you focus on what you're thankful for, what you're grateful for, the positive things in your life, those are the things that are going to show themselves to you. And you'll start noticing more and more of them. And they started to do studies on gratitude journals, and they've found that when people do keep a gratitude journal, that in general they start to feel better. because they're noticing the positive things instead of you know those people, they focus on the negative. You say, oh, it's beautiful out, and they're like, the mosquitoes are bad. You know what, like it doesn't matter. You can say whatever and they will find the negative. Try and be the person who is always noticing the positive. Be Pollyanna, yeah, basically. And if you keep noticing the positives, it will help you see more positives. And it keeps you in the moment instead of being focused on some unknown future. So they, like I said, they're doing these studies and they are finding that people who are thankful are in general less stressed. Okay, so on that note, I would like you to write a list of 10 things that you are grateful for. Okay. So, was anyone surprised by anything that they were grateful for that you weren't expecting? I think that's a very strange question, but anything come up that you weren't expecting? Probably if you'd written for longer. That is one technique I'll tell you about. It's a fun one. This isn't necessarily a stress-reducing one, but it's called lists of 100. And you number the paper from 1 to 100, and then you title it with whatever it is. So let's just put it 100 things I'm stressed about, 100 things I'm worried about, and you just write without thinking. You fill out those 100. And the point is to make your brain tired. It's kind of funny. The first third, you write about things that you're expecting because they're all right there and they're going around and around anyways. You already knew about that. The second third, you start to repeat because you can repeat as many times as you want. You start to say some strange things come in there. And the third, your brain's so tired that you start to get to the real truth of the matter. And surprises will come out that you might not have been expecting, and you might be stressed about something that you had no idea it might not have been conscious at all. So what it's doing is bringing up from the subconscious. And you can use those lists of 100 for anything at all. So that was just a little tangent there. So does anyone have any questions at this point? Okay. All right, so how many of you do journal or have journaled in the past? Yeah. And anyone else wanted to but don't think you have the time or don't know what to say? Any of those, right? Okay. So, like I said earlier, the biggest thing I hear is people say to me, well, there's two things I always hear. I don't have time, and the other one is I started, but then I couldn't do it every day. And so I just stopped. And it doesn't matter what workshop I do. So do you write every day? To me, no, I don't. Because my theory is, if I put journaling on my to-do list, it suddenly kind of defeats the purpose. So I write when I need to. And granted, I started, how I started this journaling, anyone heard of The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron? Morning pages is how I started. And what morning pages are is first thing in the morning before you speak to anybody, even the cat, she says, before you have your coffee, before you're fully awake, you just write stream of conscious for 20 minutes straight. And it takes practice, it does, because we're not used to just allowing it all to come out. She calls it taking out the garbage. And so you just write, and you get all that stuff out that's been building up, and it gives you a clean slate for the day. So when I started doing this, I had just graduated from college, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I started the morning pages, and I got addicted That's why I'm still here 20-something years later, still doing this stuff. I totally got addicted to this morning pages thing, and it is addictive. That might be a bad word, but it really, I felt like I needed it. And I was writing every single day. Then life happened, and I had children and, a life and all that. And so now there I go through spurts. Some days I am writing every day, and it might be this much, it might be this much. There's other times where I go weeks and weeks. It doesn't matter. It's a tool. It's there when you need it. It's like a friend who you can call, you haven't spoken to for 6 months, and they're not going to be like, why didn't you call me? You just can write in your journal. 2 o'clock in the morning, it's there. So, how to start journaling? First of all, take that pressure off that there's some proper right way to do it. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So like with the morning pages, there is a set time of day to do it, which is the morning. That works for some people doesn't. So you can set aside a time and say, this is my time, I'm going to write. Or you just write whenever you think about it. I have a notebook in every bag I own, in every corner of the house, and I can't think without my pen. I am a writer by profession, and so of course I write on the computer, but I don't journal on the computer. I could never do that, and that's always a question that gets asked, so I will tell you right now. For people who are very comfortable on the computer, you can journal on the computer. The point is to get the words out, but there is something about the physicalness of holding a pen on the paper. And there are studies on this, and I can't remember everything right now, but there is that body connection. Natalie Goldberg, who wrote Writing Down the Bones, she said, writing with the hand, it's the head connected to the heart to the hand. That's so, and I didn't say that as well as she did, but there's something about writing by hand. I would definitely recommend that you do it that way. But then again, there are no rules, so. And so you can start with the 5-minute sprint. That's the beauty of the 5-minute sprint. You can get something out, you can get whatever you're feeling out right at that moment in 5 minutes, and if you want, you can continue. If you can continue for longer, or you'll have something that you can then go back. What I have my people in my workshops do is we always do a beginning writing, which is just 5 minutes, but then I have them do a feedback write, and part of that feedback write is to maybe circle something that jumped out at them, like, I wonder why I used that word. That's an interesting thing. So circling, underlining, so that when you have time, you can go back and peel back that onion a little bit more. So, any questions on how to start journaling? Okay. All right, so now we're going to look at the medical and therapeutic benefits of this type of writing. In the 1980s, Dr. James Pennebaker started doing research on writing for healing. And he comes on the heels of the Dr. Ira Progoff, who wrote at a journal workshop. That, as far as I know, is the very first book of this type of writing. And it's a big book. It's not easy to read. He wrote it in the 50s, I believe. It is very structured. I have to admit, I have not made it through it myself. What he did was he took this type of writing and made it so that you, each technique you had a section in your notebook. So you'd have unsent letters in one part, you'd have dialoguing in another part, you'd have dreams in another part, you'd have who knows what. That doesn't personally work for me. Some people, they're all over that. They love categorizing things and putting it there. For me, it doesn't work. I just want to be able to just write And if I suddenly think of my dream while I'm in the middle of journaling, then I'm going to write down my dream. One thing, just talking about dreams, made me think, if you are writing where you separate your dreams and your other writing, it's really important to always date your entries. There's no other rules with journaling but dating. And the reason we suggest this is some people don't ever want to look at their writing ever again. Some people destroy it. I could never do that. You should see my closet. I have every journal I have ever written since I was 12 years old in my closet, and I have lugged it from Castleton to Burlington to Mississippi they're all there. And it was a good thing I did, because I ended up using some of them for my graduate work. And so if you don't destroy them, they're there so you can, if say you write something today, and a month from now you go back and look at it. Now you, in your mind, might be thinking, wow, I haven't progressed from there at all. Like, I'm still stuck. But you go back and you look and you go, oh, you have moved forward. And, or you'll see you haven't. So it's a tool to see where you are. If you've made progress, even if it's the little bit, you celebrate it. I know I'm going off many tangents of the whole de-stressing thing, but it's all related. So I was talking about Ira Progoff. In the 70s, I believe the first book of this nature was written, was Christine Rayner's The New Diary, and that was where this concept of journaling started. And so it's kind of, relatively speaking, a new field. The idea of using this type of writing as therapy is new, but any writer, anyone who's ever written a poem, anyone who's ever written a book knows that writing is therapeutic. And so Dr. Pennebaker came along in the 80s. He's a psychiatrist in Texas, and he started doing these studies, and what he found is pretty amazing. He did these tests with college students where he tested their blood and then had them write for 4 days straight, 20 minutes per day. He was really focused on trauma, but it all works. He found that writing for 20 minutes, 4 days in a row, so then they tested their blood after. They found they had higher immunity, and they had less visits to the doctor that lasted for 6 weeks. So 4 days of writing for 20 minutes, and they had boosted their immunity for 6 whole weeks. So I always say to people, I'm the healthiest person ever. So there's the medical evidence, and they keep testing things. There's more and more research out there about what this type of writing does. The other things they have figured out is that it helps boost your concentration, information retention, and confidence. So this is huge for children. If you allow a child to express themselves in this way, it's going to help them learn. And children who journal and pre-writers, that's doodling. If they journal from an early age, they learn to read and write faster. They have found with older children, higher test scores, less absence from school, and they did this great study with, I think it was like 50 laid off CEOs. I don't know where they found 50 laid off CEOs all at one time, but this is another one of Pennebaker's tests. And he split them into groups, and he found that the group that wrote expressively, as opposed to not writing at all or just writing today, the ones who wrote expressively, which I'm just, quick tangent, his definition of expressive writing is when you write about the experience and the feelings that go along with it at the same time. And I'll talk about in just a second about that a little bit more. So what they found is that group that wrote in that way were hired at a hugely faster rate. And part of that is their confidence, their self-knowledge, and so my little motto, I guess I have, I don't know if I put it on the cards, but self-reflection plus self-discovery equals self-confidence, because I've seen it. The self-confidence that comes from this type of writing is amazing. So in terms of the therapeutic part, the self-healing part, here's some neurology for you. We hold emotion in our right brain, and I hope I have that the right way around. I changed it on here because I think I'd flipped it around. So I apologize if I have the wrong side of the brain, but the point is we hold our emotion in one side of our brain. The side of our brain that controls our writing is the opposite side to that. So when we write our emotions, we are integrating both sides of our brain. And integrating both sides of the brain is when we have those aha moments. And here's another technique for that. It's called clustering or mind mapping. Does anyone know mind mapping? You know, when you do this, it's another way of outlining. People use this for many, many purposes. I use it to figure out when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to write for my article or for when I was writing my thesis. But they use it in therapy as well. And the reason it works is because our brains, one side of our brain loves the randomness of this word association. The other side likes that we do little circles with lines, and it likes the structured part of it. So we're using both sides of our brain in that technique. And the reason it's so great for therapy is because when you have those two sides of your brain working together, that is when you figure things out. So it's an amazing process. So going back to the expressive writing, how it helps is when you are integrating your experience and your emotions through the writing. So are there any questions about that? About anything?
I lost you on the mind mapping thing. What was this supposed to be?
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. I will show you what mind mapping is. So the question is, what is mind mapping? Clustering. So mind mapping or clustering, you would have your central idea. So let's put stress. And then you go work. And particular, Susie Q is stressing me out. And then you do this, and you do this. So, and the reason it works is this is how our brain works. Our brains don't work in outline format. Well, maybe some do, but I don't know many people who work that way. But this is the way our brain, we jump all over the place. So when we put it down in writing, we are helping our brains process. Any questions? Thank you for doing that. Yeah, I was waving around a little bit there. So please jump in with any questions. Okay, so let's just do a little bit more writing, and then we're going to get to the crux of this whole thing, is why we're here, the stress part. This is all leading up to it. What I would like you to do is get your little prompt card out. And whichever one jumps out at you, just pick one. And I'm going to bet there's one or more on here that you go, oh, no, 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 no. I don't want to go there. So my recommendation is you go there. Because whatever we resist is the thing we need to face. So obviously, I don't know which one you're going to do. If you want to do the one you feel most comfortable with, that's absolutely fine. So we're just going to do another 5-minute sprint on whichever prompt appeals to you or repels you. whichever one. Okay. All right. So, how was that? Getting a lot out in 5 minutes? Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. How writing calms us down. That's why you're all here. So, stress, worry, anxiety, it really is fear. It's a nebulous fear of some unknown. So my stress this morning was the unknown of how the heck I was going to get everything done today that I needed to get done. It's just, nebulous is, just that feeling. You can't pinpoint it. It's indistinct. It's fuzzy. You just feel afraid. And we translate different fears as different words, and stress is one of them. So we're going to be working with fear, and fear is a great thing to work with. It really, so many of our life's problems, if you boil them down, we're afraid of something. And stress is just one of those things. So I'm going to give you a great take-home technique. So they have found, the researchers out there have found that the very act of putting pen to paper or crayon to paper or nice gel pen to paper calms us down. Just that action calms us down. I recently have started doing mandalas. Anyone familiar with mandalas? Do them? Yeah, they're great, aren't they? So mandalas, if you're not familiar with them, they're round and have lots of intricate designs in them. And you can buy books at like Michael's or whatever that have pre-designed ones, and you can just color them in, and the gel pens are fantastic for that. Yeah, they're great. But you can also do them freehand, which is what I have started to do, and I guess I have an addictive personality because I got addicted to doing those, and now I have like notebooks of them. I do them while I'm watching TV, and it's just, it's taking you out of here and into a different place, and just concentrating on something that's mindless. So I'm tangenting all over the place here. So about getting out of your mind, leaving my mind, yoga people know that what we're aiming for is to become mindful by getting out of our heads, which sounds backwards, but so this morning I had a column to write. It was supposed to be written yesterday, but my interviewee did not get back to me on time. And I suddenly was facing my deadline at 10 o'clock this morning, and I didn't even know what I was going to write about. And so that was part of my panic, my stress today. And I did something that was completely counterintuitive. I usually sit in front of the computer and stare at it, waiting for the big idea to come. It doesn't work. So I got up, I took a shower, I went and had some lunch, very early lunch, and I just did something completely different. And I kept kind of thinking about it, but not, what am I going to write? What am I going to write? I was like, it's going to come, it's going to come. And I was washing my hands, and boom, it was there. And I went and I wrote it and I sent it off. I didn't make my deadline, but it was still okay. So now why did I go there? Oh, okay. So the writing is that way of getting out. So if you're trying to figure something out, you've got a big problem, a big decision, if you go write about something else, it might come to you. And that can alleviate the stress just in itself. So what you're doing is you're getting out of your head, monkey mind. That's the little guy, girl, whatever, runs around up here, just stress, da, 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 da. And again, go over there, do that. I'm gonna come into my body, and we're gonna figure it out from a deeper place, because the head can just be crazy sometimes. So, just the act. Writing anything in particular. You can be doodling. You can be just doing circles. You can be writing about anything. Just doing that action can calm you down. So, on the other hand, writing down your fears, your worries, your anxieties, can usually help them look smaller. There's something about those fears and worries when they're up here. I think there's a magnifying glass up here. They get huge. And the things that we're stressing about, now, I know there are some things that are really big worries. I'm not dismissing that. But our everyday little stuff, it's hardly ever as big as we make it out to be. So writing them down helps them get out of this magnifying place and put them on paper, and you see them for what they really are. And the other part of this is once they're down on the paper, you can say, oh, well, now I know what it is I'm dealing with. Whereas up here, they can be that nebulous thing again. You're like, I don't even really know what it is I'm worried about. I'm just worried. And we're going to get to the writing down the fears in just a minute. Also, writing down worries and to-dos promotes action. Another thing with the morning pages, someone said to me, well, I have this one student who's been in one of my workshops it's an ongoing thing. She's been with me for about 18 months or so. And she tells anybody who will listen that she used to just whine in her journal. And so she got so sick of herself. And now she journals for more productive reasons. And what I found when I was writing my morning pages was there would be certain things that every day I'd be like, whine, whine, whine. And I got so sick of hearing myself talk about it, I decided to do something about it. So there's a way that this can promote action. You say, well, this is obviously a big issue in my life. Why don't I get off my duff and do something about it? So, and that's where to-do lists come in if you're not frightened by them, like my husband is. So the pen to paper, using it as a meditation. It is a very meditative practice. I write quite often really from a place of meditation. What the words that are coming out aren't necessarily that important. I'm just letting my unconscious, my subconscious talk. And so in a way, it's like having a daydream. You're just letting things come out. And sometimes it doesn't even make sense. But what's really interesting is very often this type of writing is poetic, because our subconscious is poetic by nature. We're artists. Every human being is a creator, a artist. And so that's why our dreams are so fascinating. If you're writing from that place, it is a poetic place. So, and there is poetry therapy for a reason. And this is an offshoot of poetry therapy. So going back to lists real quick, it's a way to organize your thoughts, and just prioritizing helps reduce stress a little bit. I tend to be one of these people that if I know I have a certain amount of things to do in a day, my husband says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. But I just want to shove the whole thing in my mouth and I don't know what to do with it. So writing lists helps reduce stress because you can see which one needs to be done first. And that comes back to that list of 100 again. You can really get to, this is the thing that needs to be dealt with. So, any questions, comments before we do the next little exercise? Yes?
Did you find, years ago I used to work with some students and they had to remember maps. And instead of just trying to look at the map and remember it, I had them draw a picture of the map. And it's almost like your body remembers it when you go to take the test. And so that feeling's still there. And that's what some of this stuff you're talking about reminds me of.
Yeah, so the comment is that writing or drawing helps remember. Absolutely. There is definitely, I used to take my test that way. I would remember where my notes, how my notes were written. That's what I would see. And some people aren't as visual as that, but there is something about getting it down on paper that you're bringing in another part of your brain. So yes, absolutely, it does help the learning. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we are going to do the fear chart. What I'd like you to do is to take a new sheet of paper and either in your little books or the bigger paper and divide it into 3 columns. Okay, the top of the first column, I want you to write, you can use any of these words, fear, stress, worry, anxiety, whatever it is, thank you, that you are stressed about. Or this is the fear chart if you want to word it what you're afraid of, because that's really, like I said, this is what stress is. You're actually afraid of something. The next column I want you to title reality. And the last one is a positive, or just positive. So what I would like you to do is I'm going to give you some time to write down whatever you're worried about. What's stressing you out right now? What causes you anxiety in general? Something you know you're afraid of? Anything like that. Then I would like you to say what the reality is. Do I really need to be afraid of this? Is this really something I need to spend my time being stressed about? And like I said, there are things that are legitimately stressful. And so your reality might be the same as your stress. Some things don't work quite as well as others. But even with those that the reality seems pretty close to the stress, what is a possible positive that could come out of this? And what this does, one of the things that Dr. Pennebaker found was we as humans like stories. We live by stories. We like beginnings, middles, and ends. And this is how he helps his trauma patients. When they see their trauma, trauma is when your worldview gets flipped on its head. And when you've got PTSD or any of those other traumatic issues, you're focused on the trauma. You keep reliving it over and over again, and you can't get past it. And this kind of writing, the expressive writing, is a way to see a new perspective, to pull back and say, oh, but look, that happened. And one of the examples I think was, one of those, when the highway collapsed or something, and people were trapped under there, able to see the people who helped. And I think that's what Mr. Rogers said. In every disaster, there's always people who are helping. And that shifts the perspective. When you see some good in what seems beyond bad, shift your perspective. And there's many, many techniques that I teach about shifting perspective, because that is how we heal ourselves. That is how we reduce our stress about going over and over something over and over again. And the other part of that is to be able to see a positive that possibly came out of it. Most things, even the worst things in the world, something amazing came out of it. So this fear chart is, we're getting away from trauma and just bringing ourselves down to regular, everyday worries. And so here's a silly example. My husband went away for a week this week. And I don't know if any of you heard that there was supposed to be an enormous storm today. They were calling it a bomb or something. Thankfully, it didn't come. But suddenly, I'm a feminist, and I was thinking, I don't need my husband. But then I was like, but there's this big storm coming, and I was going to have to shovel our driveway all by myself and all this stuff. And that's just an everyday little silly stressor. Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with it. But the reality is, I would have dealt with it. I can shovel my driveway. I have people I can call. You know, so it's not, it just takes it out and changes it. So, you got your 3 columns, your fear, your reality, and a possible positive outcome. And so I'm going to give you some time to write as many as you want, or if you just want to do one, that's fine. Just aim for 7 to 10 things, and then see what happens. Tell us a response to that little exercise. Yeah.
So fear was like fireworks. It's not really like from bombs that went off over my head. It in reality is a lot of noise, and the positive was the understanding, and it led to like 20 other things that they picked.
Wow. So that was, the fear was, you said fireworks, and the reality they're not bombs. And what was the last thing you said? The positive was?
The understanding, because it led to like 10, 15, 20 other things.
It led to other understandings. Great, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else want to, you don't necessarily have to share the fear itself, but how did that exercise work for you?
Some things could be really simplified amazingly, like one word could just capture it.
Things can be simplified with one word. Sorry, I'm having to repeat what you're saying, which is very strange for me to do. I don't usually have to do that. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Funny story, when I used this in one of my creativity workshops, because this is actually a lot of writers or artists in general, they have this fear of creating for some reason. It's because it's so close to our heart. We're afraid of failure. And so I used this in my creativity workshop. And we started this exercise, and the moment one of the women in there wrote down her fear, she went, baloney. She just knew instantly that this fear that had been running around in her head about why she wasn't creating was just silly. And so it just it opened something up immediately. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? So the great thing about this fear chart is that you can use it in your everyday life for anything that's going on, things that are just gotten too big up there, and you can just kind of check in with yourself and see what the reality is, and it can help bring down the anxiety. So we just have a few more minutes, and so I'm going to ask if there's any other questions or comments, and then we'll do a quick finishing up right. And I can, if there's anybody who wants to speak to me afterwards, I'll be here too. So, okay, so what I would like you to do is take your prompt card again, and here are your options. Either take another prompt, or as a fun little exercise, write on the same prompt you wrote earlier and see if something different happens. If you write something, because you can contradict yourself. We are paradoxes. We can contradict ourselves in the same sentence, and it's all true. Our truth can be contradictory. And also by using the same prompt, you're going to possibly dig a little deeper. So those are your two. One other option is to go back to any of your previous writes that you've done in here and dig a little deeper into something you wrote earlier. So just you take something that you noticed and do a free write on that. Okay, and the very, very last thing we're going to do is something called an alpha poem. And don't get frightened, because poetry frightens me too, but this is one of my favorite techniques. And what you do, I think they call them acrostics in school. I'd like you to write stress down your page. And what you do is you just allow the first letter to suggest a word or phrase or sentence, and you just let it come. Just see what happens. Don't try and be a great poet, just let the words come to do with stress. So in a regular workshop, this would be where everyone got to share their fun poems, but we unfortunately can't do that in this situation. But that's what alpha poems are. And so any questions, comments before we finish up? Yes?
What other kind of groups do you do?
So I have, right now, I don't have too many at the moment. So the question is what other workshops I have. Right now, the one I have open is on Tuesday morning, and it is the Journal to the Self workshop. And I use that structure as a way to help people get writing, whatever writing they want to do.
Journal to the Self?
Yes, that is what I'm certified in. It's a book, and great book. If anyone is interested in this type of writing, that is a really great book. It's by Kathleen Adams, who I have trained with, and it gives the techniques that I teach. And so the Tuesday morning workshop is, we go through that, the techniques as a way to get you, if you're a poet, if you're writing a novel, a play, a memoir, or you just want to write. Some people are just there because they just want to write for no particular reason. So that's on Tuesday, and I do have openings in that one. It's an ongoing one. So at the moment, that's all I have, but I schedule things every once in a while. So.
You have this thing at the Godnick Center?
Yes, thank you. The Godnick, in April, I am running a memoir writing workshop. Mondays in April. Any other questions, comments? Yes?
Can you explain a little bit more of what you're going to do in the workshop?
In the memoir workshop? The question is what I'll be doing in the memoir workshop. So it will be using journaling techniques as a way to get the memories coming and to get them flowing. When I was writing my memoir, like I said, I wrote most of it in my journal. That way I wasn't tied to, oh, this came first, or that, like the whole chronological thing. I just, as I remembered something, I just dealt with it, and I also wasn't worried, oh, I'm gonna hurt this person, because it was in my journal. Then I could go back and edit it. So we'll be doing various journaling techniques to get those kind of things flowing. So, did that answer your question? Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, so thank you so much for coming, and there is evaluations, and also I do have mailing list sign up if anyone is interested in that. There's forms on the front tables.